And we're live.
Hello, world.
Hello, world. Hello, YouTube. Get my stuff all set up. As usual, no one's here. Come join us, people. Anybody?
Hello, we're here.
Send out a tweet or two. Make sure people can join if they want to.
Join us.
Come totally join us. Because it's cool and stuff.
All right.
Retweet stuff all over the place.
Tweet. Oh no, my live stream is off.
What?
Twitter being Twitter.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm going to stop looking at Twitter. Let's get this thing on the road, huh?
Okay.
Here we go. Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin podcast, your source for IT news, commentary, and a healthy dose of paranoia. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 22 of the Iron Sysadmin podcast. I'm your host, Nate, and once again, joining me from his undisclosed underground location is...
Good evening. It is
Good
I.
evening.
I'm just trying to follow suit. It's me, Jason.
From your underground location. I didn't know there were coffins in your underground location. Following.
No, I mean, I
Come
don't
on, roll
think
with it.
so. I thought, no, that's what the woods are for. You keep the bodies in the house.
Yeah, right.
Standards, man.
Yeah, I mean, they start to smell after a while, and you just can't have that. It's really unsanitary. Okay, so here we are yet again on a Monday evening.
Yes.
Guess
Don't we have anything better to do?
I don't know. It seems like I'm spending way too many nights up late doing things that I should just be doing during the day. Like recording podcasts.
Podcast during the... I mean, I could do that. I'm not sure my job would approve, but we could do that.
Yeah, I'll just totally start recording the podcast from my desk at work. That sounds like a good idea. No?
Okay.
I think it sounds great.
See how fast it goes, or how long it goes.
See how long I can get away with it. Why does Nate have a mic at his desk now? It's for sysadmin work. I have voice command servers.
Aren't you in an open office, an open floor plan now?
Yep. So yeah, it wouldn't go very well. There'd be lots of background
No,
noise.
it just means we have a lot of co-hosts.
Yeah, right. Everyone just pop in. It sounds like a great idea. We're gonna have to try this sometime. Speaking of co-hosts, I hear your Slack dinging at you.
It's okay. I don't know what you're talking about. That would never have happened if my volume was down.
If I had not forgotten to mute. All right, I guess we'll roll on into the news, huh?
News. Yes, news.
So our first article of the evening comes from the New Stack, which I don't know if anyone's ever heard of this site. The first time I visited it, but apparently Red Hat has patched an interesting security vulnerability in Neutron, also in the Linux kernel. I have to figure out which one is which here, but basically there was this interesting vulnerability. Yeah, I think that it was via Neutron. You could pass arguments to syscontrol to turn off kernel parameters, which would disable IP tables. I mean, what could go wrong, right?
Wow. I mean, ever since they got that new firewall D thing, you don't need IP tables anymore.
Yeah, good point. Except that it all uses IP tables.
Crap.
Weird. So I guess I mean this sort of points out one of the many problems with software-defined everything is that software has bugs.
Am I reading this right? They released packages to fix OpenStack 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11.
Yeah, well, you know, they must be all the currently supported versions or something.
Damn.
Remember, OpenStack rolls a new version every 6 months.
Okay.
So I mean, this is what? Let's see.
That's a lot of versions to
from 6 to 11.
support.
It's like 3 years worth of OpenStack.
That's a lot of versions to support.
It is. So yeah. Anyway, when you have software-defined networking, which is, if you're unaware, that's what Neutron is. It's an SDN provider. When you have software-defined networking, if there's a bug in your software that's defining your networking, it could definitely open you to various attacks similar to this one.
Then you have bug-defined networking.
Then you have bug-defined networking, correct?
We need one of those things where you can push a button and make a, you know, the old drum roll with the. Never mind.
You know, you're not going to believe this. The recorder's not recording. Did I not say I hit the record button?
Welcome to Iron Sysadmin.
Yeah. Take 2, guys.
Take 2, episode 22A. Is that what all the cool kids do?
Hey, we're recording now.
Oh, good.
God
hello,
damn it.
hello, world.
All right. So pretty much everything. Hell, even the intro we didn't get recorded.
I just do the intro at the end again.
Yeah, we'll record it at the end. It's still written down. All right. So we'll start with the intro music. Take 2. That was the wrong one. It's not going to be a good night, folks. If anyone's watching live, you're in for a fun evening.
How much beer have you had?
Like not even half a glass. God. All right, here we go for reals this time. Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin podcast, your source for IT news, commentary, and a healthy dose of paranoia. We have our first comment on having to restart the podcast. Awesome. Hi, folks, and welcome to Take 2 of Iron Sysadmin podcast, episode 22.
Take 2? What happened to take 1?
Some idiot forgot to hit the record button.
I'm sorry. I'll try harder next time.
Good evening. I'm your host, Nate. And joining me from his undisclosed basement location is...
the guy in the basement. That would be me. Oh, hi. I'm Jason.
There was totally discussion about dead bodies and coffins on the first one that didn't get recorded. You're all going to have to wonder what we were talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Or just go watch the YouTube stream, which does have it recorded. Maybe I can't publish that one now.
Uh-oh. I don't know what you're talking about.
Let's just get right on to the news that we already started covering.
No.
So, from the news stack, we have a report that Red Hat has patched some flaws in Neutron and some kernel vulnerabilities, which would allow an attacker to basically disable the software-defined firewall in your software-defined networking inside of your OpenStack platform. So, as we've already covered, this covers OpenStack 6 clear through 11.
Can I make my bug-defined networking joke again?
You can. I don't know if it'll be received quite as well.
All right, let me know when we get there, and I'll do it again.
When you have software-defined networking, you also have
flaws in the networking stack. All right. So, short and simple. Bug in Neutron that disabled a bunch of sysctl settings to disable IP tables, which then disabled them in the kernel. And so apparently, one, two, three, four, five, six different versions of OpenStack had no firewall by default.
Not no firewall by default, just the possibility to disable the firewall
Yeah.
through, I guess if I would have went with it. The CVE is linked in the article here. I'm sure you can read deeply into exactly how you could execute this, but
So is this there's the flaw, the other flaw that's actually in the Linux kernel. This is great. Scored a 9.8 out of 10 on the CVE scale.
ugh.
It's located in NFS because because file systems are just taking a beating this year.
Yeah. NFS versions 2 and 3. Isn't 4 current?
Yeah,
I think NFS version 4 is the latest. I could be wrong.
And
I haven't run an NFS server in a while.
There's probably some like default setting that automatically turns on 2 and 3 because why not?
For backwards compatibility, yeah.
Yes, of course.
Rated a 9.8 out of 10. Did you say 9.8 or just 9 out of 10?
9.8.
9.8. That's awesome.
Now this makes me want to go look up the scoring system and see if anything has ever rated a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, right. If something did, I'm sure it was on Windows. It probably kept all of us awake back in the late 90s. If you remember the various worm outbreaks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know. Did lots of research in some of those.
Some of you younger sysadmins may not remember those days. You're lucky.
Well, they got their taste of it, a couple months ago.
A couple weeks ago, yeah. Months, whatever.
Months, weeks, however long it's been.
That time that WannaCry spread.
Didn't spill a drop.
Didn't spill a drop. Are you already on your second beer because we screwed up the podcast?
No, I'm just finishing off the first one. I mean,
okay. It's a bomber. Oh, good. Oh, so it's your second glass from the same beer. Okay, cool. Yeah. So on to our next article. This is from The Verge, and this is really, I found it really interesting, which of course is why I linked it. Apparently, researchers have figured out how to add a chip into the connection between your smartphone's screen and your smartphone's motherboard, in which they can do things like intercept your input, like a la keylogger style, or they can actually control your phone by simulating input through the screen. At least that's what I'm reading into what they're claiming is possible through this. I guess the thing people are worried about is that you could buy, say, a replacement screen for your phone, from some third party because you dropped your phone and cracked the screen. And what you get is a compromised screen. Because it could be that easy to to work this stuff into a replacement screen. It's kind of interesting stuff. I mean, what do you think, Jason?
We could solve this if we would just ship screens with checksums.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, this is just, it's a physical access
Did
attack.
you check the MD5 on your screen before you plugged it in?
No, we're using SHA 256 now. Otherwise, you have too many collisions, and collisions cause broken screens. So yeah, I mean, look.
I tried to check the hash on my screen and it cracked. I got to get another one.
Physical access, and you're pretty much owned. I mean, in this case, you're adding a physical component. So the attacker may not have had access to your direct machine. But
I mean, they could have if they can tear your phone apart, insert this chip, and put it back together without you noticing.
Yeah,
that's horrible. What do they call that? OPSEC. I left
So I
my
wonder
phone
how.
unattended for so long, someone could disassemble it and insert a chip.
Trying to
Yeah.
think here. So this would go as far as the touch screen. I wonder if you could intercept the something like the fingerprint reader too.
There was mention, I thought there was mention in this article about the fingerprint reader on the Samsung or the iPhone. Maybe I'm thinking of a different
Yeah.
article I read.
Apple iPhones have secure modules to block features like Touch ID from being tampered with. Um,
Ah, there you go.
I'm
That's
I'm gonna
that was what I read.
I'm gonna go ahead and call BS on that.
Why is that?
Because I think, I mean, and I'm speculating, but if you can tap and record the input from the sensor, you can just do a replay attack.
Sure.
So now I can, whether you're present or not,
Un-
replay your fingerprint to gain
unless
access to the phone, and then
unless what they're implying is that the iPhone is somehow able to tell that it's been tampered with
yeah,
in the first place, so that when you go to put in the fingerprint, like the reader won't work or it won't send it or whatever because
maybe,
it somehow knows. Like I don't know.
maybe.
I don't design smartphones for a living, so this is all
Yeah. I
speculation
mean,
on my part.
this is slightly beyond me, but it's, I mean,
Slightly.
well, most stuff, if you can get physical access, you can replay.
Oh, absolutely,
So
absolutely. I mean, the bottom line is if someone has inserted hardware into your device, game over, right? I mean,
so don't.
whether they stole your phone and put it in, or you bought a screen that was already modified. Now, looking at the pictures in the article, it doesn't look like it's that easy to hide, but obviously anything with enough effort and work and development time can be. What I'm curious about is how does this integrated chip give them remote access? Like, does it also
Uh,
interact with the cell or Wi-Fi radios? Like, how else would you be able to control it remotely? And that sounds like it's a little more complicated than just plugging in a screen.
maybe.
Don't you
I
think?
mean, it depends on how much stuff they put in there. Who knows? Maybe they can add Wi-Fi and all sorts of other goodies to it.
Yeah, I guess. It sounds like what you end up with then is a second phone inside of your phone. That seems noticeable. You know what I
How's
mean?
that
I mean,
mean? How's
have
that
you
mean
ever
go?
have
Yo,
you
bro! I
ever
heard you like phones, so I put a phone inside your phone.
yeah, have you ever taken apart a smartphone? You
Oh
have,
yeah,
right? I
yeah,
mean, literally, the connection between the screen and the main board generally is just a ribbon cable.
yep.
So if it's like a ribbon cable with a chip in it, I guess that would be slightly less conspicuous to the average person. But as soon as you compare it to your old phone, your old screen, the one that came out, it should be obvious, I would think.
Not necessarily. Most of the ones that I've gotten that I've seen have like these weird covers over the back of it, so you don't necessarily see what's there.
Yeah, or the plug itself sometimes has like a
Yep.
plastic inlay into it that it makes it easier to plug in, and I guess you could hide a chip in that if it's small enough.
And
But
besides, if you buy it and you're not that savvy, you're just gonna plug it in anyway.
yeah,
Although I'll tell you what, replacing a screen is not easy.
I've actually
And
not replaced it. I have disconnected a screen from a main board in order to reseat connections. I've never actually replaced the screen.
and the guy that did the video who's like, oh, you can use a clothing iron to like, you know, melt the stuff on the screen to be able to pull it apart. He's a liar. I cooked it.
Goddamn liar.
I cooked it. It made pretty colors after though.
I
Still
bet.
worked.
I bet. If you ever
Then
need
we
to do
bought a
that
new phone.
again, if you ever need to do that again, let me know. I have a heat gun that is very adjustable.
Oh,
It'll
that would have
probably
been
work.
so useful.
It'll probably work
No,
better than a
I
than an
so
iron.
I've had another phone that actually I still have that I would love to replace the screen on, except that I have the screen, I have all the parts, and nobody will do it. Everybody I talk to is like, "Oh man, we don't do that." Great.
Because of the model or because
No, because they just buy the entire touch screen with the digitizer and everything because they
oh,
can
okay.
charge more, and it takes
Well,
like
not that.
10 seconds to put it
Not
together.
just that. It's probably a lot easier to do the actual swap.
Oh yeah. It's like a 5 minute operation that way.
Yeah. Well, I think we've successfully finished talking about hacked screens and rabbit trailed off into screen repair. So we're
Yeah,
going to
so
get emails about, can you fix my phone?
yeah, so if you
No, we can't.
if you need your screen replaced, just smash the rest of the phone. That way, you need an entire phone replacement. You don't have to worry about getting a hack screen.
Yeah, that sounds like a better way. Unless you get a refurbished phone, which has been hacked.
Do we have to solve everything?
We do.
We have to leave something for somebody else to solve.
Well, no, not just that. We have to leave something to solve next episode.
Oh, yes. Good call.
Okay. Right.
All right. So let's go talk about CPUs and how
Let's talk about CPUs. Yeah.
godly complicated these things are.
Yeah. So I found this nice article from The Verge about the latest release of the Intel. Let's see, Intel's new 8th generation core processors launched today. Although today was August 21st. So S/today/August 21st.
Right.
So I started reading through this article, and man, CPUs are complicated. You know, the various things that are better on the new CPU versus the older CPUs. I mean,
well, so there's a picture in here.
Drop this article because I can't talk intelligently about CPUs.
There's a nice picture in here, or at least I think it's a nice picture in here of what the CPU actually looks like. Except that I think it's a corrupted GIF. I don't think there's actually a picture here.
You mean this blur of color in here? Yeah.
So that's the 72 gazillion transistors all smushed together.
No, this is the Intel 8th generation processor die.
Yeah.
So they've killed it. It's dead.
Oh boy. I'm actually curious, just because I read about it once and it's neat. I'm curious if these chips are using any of the dim or dark silicon technology.
Oh, right, where certain parts of the CPU can be powered off when you don't need them.
Yeah,
I almost guarantee it.
Yeah, I'm
I don't know.
Really curious how that works.
On a desktop or server CPU, I don't know if that's as important as it is on mobile.
Maybe.
I don't know if you remember, but years ago, the Moto X was one of the first mobile devices that I know of that used that same technology. I think it's pretty commonplace now, where it's got dedicated CPUs for various things, and those CPUs can be powered down when they're not used or not needed. So back to the Intel CPU, some of the highlights is it offers up to a 40%, or they're claiming it will offer up to a 40% speed boost over previous 7th generation Kaby Lake chips. I love how they name their CPUs.
I thought it was Kaby Lake.
Kaby Lake? I don't know.
Okay,
I have no idea how to pronounce that.
All I'm concerned about is the last paragraph in this. I'm sorry, the second to last paragraph, where they talk about the next generation that's coming in after this, the Coffee Lake processor.
Yeah, the upcoming 14 plus Coffee Lake.
Yeah, I figure
a lake of coffee.
I figure that processor is going to last longer and work harder
because it has a lake of coffee.
Well, yeah, I mean,
to draw power from.
Well, coffee powers the world.
They go into like, I assume that this is nanometers, 14 nanometer technology node, and like I said, there's lots of stuff in here that I don't fully grasp. Anyway, there are new CPUs from Intel. They're better, up to 40% faster.
There's a whole bunch of lines in here that say things like the new generation processor is faster than the older one.
Yeah.
To which I say, really? I'm surprised.
Yeah, I know. Imagine that. They developed a new CPU that's better than the last one.
Come buy our new chip. It's crappy.
Okay, so let's move on before we sound like complete morons. I think we've already achieved that.
Speaking of complete morons.
Yeah. The first bit of irony for this article. This is from Dark Reading. And when you visit this site, you get an SSL certificate warning that certain parts of the page are not encrypted. Because
it's trying to submit something. Immediately, as soon as I open the page, it's like, are you sure you want to submit this? It's not secure.
Nope. Don't want to do that.
I wanted to open the page, not submit anything.
For all we know, Dark Reading is somehow compromised, and we're compromising all of our viewers by linking this. So
thank you, Dark Reading. Yes. Just click cancel. And gals.
You click cancel when it comes up.
And whatever else is out there.
Yeah, whoever. If there are any dragons or ponies or.
I want to be a dragon.
All right. So
Uh,
apparently, you want to cover this one? You seem like you're ready to go.
sure, sure. So it turns out, remember that guy that left the company like a year ago? He probably still has access to everything,
Yeah,
or
I
at
seem
least
to
some
remember.
stuff.
I remember an article. I forget if we covered it or if I heard it elsewhere, but there was this guy who he left a role at one company to go work for a competitor, and he was leaking secrets from his old employer to his new one for like a year afterward. You remember that? I
Yeah,
forget what the
yeah,
companies were. I mean, it's
that
just
wasn't too
recent.
long ago. Yeah.
It's just recent, a couple months ago that this all came to light. Anyway, this speaks to that. I mean, obviously the guy still had access somehow, right? I don't know if it's because his accounts weren't deprovisioned or because he had some sort of a foothold that he left there when he left. But, um, well, go ahead. I
Uh,
interrupted you.
I may have experienced this exact thing myself. Um, and the fun part
I don't
is
want to know which previous employer you're talking about because I work for one of them.
we were both there. Um, and I'm sure this will narrow it down for you. I got fired, as I typically do. And I actually stopped counting.
But we work there together. That narrows it down to two.
Oh, okay. So I left and found out that I'm fired. Like fired. Like you're fired. Get out. Not like I quit and we left on good terms. Like get out.
Dear
And
network
I
engineer with
found
all
out.
sorts of access to our backbone equipment, you're
Yeah,
fired.
yeah. But I found out I still had access, and I actually had to write them. I wrote the somebody at the company and said, "Hey, just thinking out loud here. Maybe,
Maybe
maybe
you
you
want
want
to
to remove
terminate this.
this."
I mean, honestly, telling them, well, okay, telling them no, telling them lets them know that you noticed,
Yes.
right? So now they could all of a sudden try to blame you for things.
Yep.
But telling them to deprovision it could cover your ass as well, right?
Oh, I had to tell them how.
Yeah, but I mean, depending on how they want to pull that, right?
Right. But I had to tell them how to deprovision it too. So there's
See if I
that.
can pour this beer without causing so much freaking head that I can't drink it for half an hour.
Um. Okay. What are we drinking? Anything good?
Hold on, I'm concentrating.
All right. So going back to this article.
Yes, right. We were talking
Quite,
about an article, weren't we?
quite simply, if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you're in a position of power. I mean, you're a sysadmin. And that usually means that you're typically one of the first people to know that somebody's leaving. And you're also responsible for removing their access to most things.
Indeed.
Just a suggestion. You should go ahead and do that.
Yeah, because if you don't, they keep access. So the article from Dark Reading says that I don't know where the number comes from because I don't know that was there a poll that they had completed.
I don't know.
50% of ex-employees can still access corporate apps. 50%. That is a failure of like epic levels right there.
Yeah, and since 73.6% of all stats are made up on the spot, it's pretty accurate.
Right. Half of all employees that leave a position are not deprovisioned. Like that is horrible.
Yep. Yeah, this is some sort of researcher poll. 500 IT decision makers.
So like C-level folks that probably lied on the poll anyway?
That usually means managers, and they don't know what the hell's going on anyway.
Yeah, how would they know?
Ugh. Anyway, and this of course is completely angled towards the threat of ex-employees.
Yeah, well, it's Dark Reading.
So they're saying 50% can still access, and of that, roughly 50%. No, let's see. Oh, okay. 20% of respondents report their failure to deprovision employees from corporate applications has contributed to a data breach. And of those, 47% say more than 10% of all data breaches have been the result of ex-employees. That sounds like an opinion.
More than 10. What?
That sounds like an opinion. I don't know. Okay, so dodgy statistics aside,
Of those 47, I'm still trying
yeah,
to wrap my head around the percent of it. Right.
yeah. So it
47% of the
got
people say
look
10% of all breaches. Okay, I get it now.
deep deprovision things, and just because you have a centralized LDAP doesn't mean that you've deprovisioned everything. Especially when you're dealing with power users like sysadmins, network admins, anybody in a position to actually have control of an account on a system could very well have something that's local as well.
So I mean, this brings to light a real problem in IT, and that is if you don't have central auth for everything, there are a lot of places to deprovision these things,
Yep.
especially as we're slowly but surely moving our borders out into the cloud. So unless every cloud app you use is able to talk back to your central directory, whatever it is, LDAP, AD, some sort of CAS, whatever, right? Um, there's accounts everywhere that you need to keep track of, and you need to deprovision. I mean, I've got hundreds, literally, that's not an exaggeration, hundreds of RHEL servers that all have local accounts on them that need to be deprovisioned if someone in a high enough role leaves. I mean, like, just as a complete off the wall example, if I were to leave the college, my coworkers would have me to delete 300 times individually because we don't have central auth on the RHEL boxes yet. Now, that's a project I aim to solve, and I'm already in process. But in the past, when we've had people in positions like mine leave or higher or at least equal, um, it's been a job to get them all removed. Now, we've done it through automation and whatnot, but imagine if you didn't have an automation structure in place. I mean,
Right.
imagine managing 300 servers without automation. Ugh.
And just
Wait, I,
because
I
you
was there not long ago.
yeah,
I
just
fixed
just
that by
because you
deploying automation.
yep, just because you remove those local accounts doesn't mean that they don't have access anymore.
Well, but I mean that's not necessarily the point of the article, though. The article is like
Right.
people did not deprovision them.
Right. Yep.
I mean, you're right. You're right. Um, just because I was deleted from a server doesn't mean like that test account that I created was deleted, and maybe I still have credentials for that. But this article doesn't really cover that.
Yeah. Who knows? You may have some of the root password too.
Yeah, it could be I've got the root password. It could be that I'm malicious and I put a back door on, right? But again,
Right.
that's not part of the article.
Yep. Yep. So the answer is LDAP as a service.
LDAP as a service?
Yep.
Okay,
It's a thing. I don't
it is
know.
a thing.
I figured I would see if that was a thing, and it is. I'm pretty
Oh,
sure if you put as a service after any word now, it'll pop up in Google as a thing that somebody's trying to sell.
yeah, yeah.
Rule 34 as a service.
What? Oh, yeah. There you go.
Rule 34 as a service. Now I'm probably going to destroy my browser now.
All of
Okay.
a sudden, Jason drops off the podcast. We have to start over again.
All right, moving along before we drop off the internet like Japan
That
did.
is literally the first time I ever forgot to record the podcast. I have to say. Hopefully, it doesn't happen again.
You're in good company.
Anyway, so did you ever like mess up and take half of Japan offline?
No, but I've seen this exact same thing multiple times.
I mean, you were a
Multiple
network
times.
engineer for a large part of your career, and you still probably have access to things similar to that. Maybe because you weren't
Yes.
deprovisioned.
Yeah, one of
Did
the
you ever take half a country offline?
no, but I have talked to people who have um BGP, Border Gateway Protocol. It's a
Mm-hmm.
routing protocol that basically
Thing.
makes the internet run.
Hey, it's a thing.
And what you may not know is that it's very simple to screw up, and a small oops can cause things like taking countries offline.
The big G
Um,
accidentally botched a border gateway protocol. Accidentally botched a okay, a BGP. I didn't know that was a way that you could say BGP.
I don't think it is, but okay.
Around noon local time, the origin of the blunder was a number of falsely announced peer prefixes sent to Verizon.
Okay,
Google,
so
I think Google was trolling Verizon. That's what happened here.
right, so
They were trying to rickroll all of Verizon's customers, and it went south, and Japan went offline.
For those that don't know the terminology, when you're sending a prefix, it's basically announcing an IP range that you're responsible for. Which means that for some reason Google decided to send the prefixes of Japan, and then
Hmm.
Verizon, being a nice big tier one provider, just
Accepted them because
accepted them and
Google.
announced them everywhere.
You can
So,
trust Google.
so there's
Google
this
wouldn't mess up and take Japan
right.
offline.
There's this thing called BCP 38. It's this really neat best common practices document um, that's been floating around since I've been in networking. So like 30 some odd years. No, maybe less, 25 some odd years that I've been in it. But anyway, it basically has things like spoofing filters and, all sorts of different filters and checks and stuff to make sure things like this don't happen. General rule, you should know what your customers are going to be announcing, and you shouldn't let them announce things they shouldn't. Now, when you get
Why?
into peering connections like this, sometimes that gets it's a little different, because now you're talking about um, companies that are specifically connecting back and forth to allow transit traffic, which may be what happened here. And then things get a little bit looser, but there's usually something in place to try to fix that. And if you don't, this sort of thing happens. It's gotten better in recent years, but it was DEF CON a number of years ago that they got up on stage. Somebody presented a BGP hack and routed all of, I forget what, literally through the DEF CON servers or through the DEF CON routers live on stage. So this is the thing you can do. And then I think there was an article not too long ago, maybe a couple of years ago, about China making a mistake and routing all of the US's traffic through China briefly.
Yeah, that I recall. I was just about to say that I remember this happening
Yeah.
not too long ago, and I think that's the incident I'm remembering.
Not hard to do.
Yeah,
Not hard
well,
to
I
do.
mean, BGP is a protocol which you're supposed to. I mean, like, there's no. If you've got access to a core router like that, you can modify BGP, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, you're supposed to know what you're doing if you're there.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot of like.
Yeah. But there's humans involved and people make mistakes.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly.
So I mean here.
In the same way that who was it? The S3 outage a couple months ago.
Right.
An admin screwed up in his automation, and he
Yep.
took most of S3 down. It's like, oh, oops.
But the article actually points out earlier this year, Iran tried to block porn and broke the internet in Hong Kong. Apparently, all porn comes from Hong Kong. Prior to that, Pakistan blocked YouTube, and
I thought all the porn came from California.
what did they blocked YouTube worldwide. Oh, that's right. They basically stole the prefixes for YouTube, and all the traffic went to Pakistan where YouTube isn't, so it all black-halled.
That's a problem.
This time around, they broke Switch, Wii U, and 3DS gamers. Clearly, we need a better protocol because you can't take gaming down. That's just not going to fly.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a problem.
Unreal. So yeah. Watch your BGPs, kids. Don't screw them up.
You could take Japan offline, and we don't want to take Japan offline.
No. Think of the culture.
Think of the culture. That's right. All right, so that's it for the news for tonight. Got a handful of announcements, nothing real major. We've got another LV Hackers meetup coming up on the 6th of September, again at Two Rivers Brewing in Easton. So if you want to join us, come on down. It's a good time. I think it starts at 6 as usual. Danny won't be there. Because Danny's not there, apparently I'm running things. I guarantee nothing.
He's not dedicated enough.
He's not. I mean, he's got to like watch his kid or something. What the hell?
Unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
And in other news, you might remember that guy John who was on episode, I think it was 11, talking about OpenStack. He said he wanted to come back, and we finally figured out a date when he could come back. Apparently, he's a busy guy. He couldn't come back until the end of September. So September 25th's episode, which I believe will be episode 24, maybe even 25. Does that mean we've been doing this for a whole year? We didn't start in September last year, did we? No, I'm going to have to go look.
Right after DerbyCon, I thought. Yeah. So October, maybe.
Awesome. So we've almost been at this a year. So it could be that on our 1 year anniversary, we'll have John back on.
Theoretically, 26 should be our 1 year anniversary. Well, it will be because we've kept to the 2 week thing.
26. Yeah, I'm thinking months, but you're right. There's more weeks. Weeks don't quite even out. There's not 48 weeks in a year. It's what, 52? Whatever. We'll figure it out. It's almost been 2 years. But John will be back. We're going to talk about OpenStack some more. I believe he was going to chat about deploying an OpenStack, deploying like a lab environment. But we'll hash that out a little more, and we'll have a little more information about that. I'll have to send him an email or something and catch up and make sure he's still available and whatnot. But at the point where we scheduled it, 25th of September should be that day. All right, that's about it for announcements. Got anything cool going on?
Yeah. All sorts of cool stuff all the time. A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
All sorts of cool stuff.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of it shortly. Learning new things every day, doing crazy, insane things at work. You know,
crazy, insane things at work. What have I been doing at work? I'm trying to think now.
It was fun to say, will this work? And then it does.
Working with free IPA. Well, Red Hat Directory Services, I think is what they're officially calling it. The Red Hat packages anyway. Trying to get central authentication set up so that, the next time someone leaves, I can deprovision them a lot easier.
And the next time your central authentication goes down, nobody can do anything anywhere.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, that's part of what I'm considering before deployment.
That's why we have local accounts. Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know. Would the best way to handle that be just to have one or two local accounts? Which would then, I mean, you'd almost defeat the purpose then. You'd have to deprovision those when someone leaves if they knew the password.
That's what root accounts are for. Root accounts where the password is stuck in a lockbox that you never have to touch.
Yeah, so like we don't allow SSH as root, but you can still get to the console as root.
Yep.
That seems to be a good enough backdoor. Not backdoor, but front door, whatever.
Yeah, I'm playing with free IPA myself.
The daemon Active Directory is coming.
Nope, not gonna do it.
Not for you. Nope,
never gonna do it.
Yeah, I know you won't. No, we're to the point where it just makes sense. We have so many Windows boxes, not so much on the server side, but desktops that need to be managed. That it just makes sense.
We had
I almost hate to admit it, but it makes sense.
We had a vendor come in who we needed to use, and they absolutely insisted on Windows. And so I dug into it a whole bunch and said, well, I mean, is your client written in Windows? Like, what's, like in some language it only runs on Windows? Like, what's the deal? Turns out they wanted Windows because that's the only platform they knew how to FTP something from.
What?
Yeah. Yep. There's this crazy remote managed FTP program that they wanted to use, which, threw up all manner of red flags. And
why?
so I had a little chat with their engineer and said, yeah, that's not a thing that we do. And he said, oh, well, you know how to use FTP? I said, yeah. Could you just
Yeah,
do that on another
we can handle
platform?
that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Do that. Think done. No
Awesome.
Windows.
Nice.
Yes.
So last week we talked about something I was trying to work into my Nextcloud deployment so that we could better handle our show notes. And this week we have it.
Yeah. So I can type all sorts of craziness while he's trying to do something and it screws him
Yeah,
up and it's
gets all
hysterical.
kinds of weird and yeah. So Collabora Office, I now have it up and running in Nextcloud, and it's actually kind of cool. It's not quite as flawless as Google Docs. I've never used Office 365 to compare it to that, but I'd imagine it's not as flawless as that either. But it does do the job. We've got collaborative editing going on right now in the show notes, and it's pretty cool. So, yeah, neat stuff. It is odd though. There's pieces that work counterintuitively.
Pieces that don't
Don't
work
work
at
at
all,
all. Like copy and paste.
or
It's weird
copy
if you like,
link just doesn't work.
yeah, if you like right click and try to copy something, it does some sort of an internal. There's like an internal clipboard, and it just doesn't work. I mean, it did work once, but then the other time it didn't. It's like if I have something on my clipboard already, it doesn't overwrite it. It's weird. I don't know. I don't know. It's still better than having a text file that whenever one of us tries to save, it overwrites the other.
Yes.
Now we can see when we're going to overwrite somebody else. Oh, you made some text red. Awesome.
See, look at that. See how quick that was?
Yeah.
Because it just did
Don't
that.
make
It was
this
like instant.
Don't make this turn into that time that we were doing the Derby discussion and our Google Doc ended up being a pile of emojis.
I don't do emojis. That was not me.
Don't you? It must have been Dustin then, because
I don't do emojis. Thanks. Well, not often anyway.
not often. I got in the habit of like good old fashioned smileys back in the BBS days, and I've stuck with it. So if I'm using a client that automatically translates them to emojis, then I use emojis.
Yep.
Otherwise, you get ASCII, smileys.
It's all about the sideways smiley.
Yes, absolutely.
What is that? Just turn your head sideways.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I see it now.
Yep.
You can get pretty creative with those things, man.
Yeah. So this is pretty slick. So Calabora.
Calabora is how I've heard it pronounced.
So that runs in a separate container.
Yeah. So Nextcloud 12 and up has native support for Calabora. All you do is like go into your admin settings and you tell it where your Calabora server lives. You can run Calabora on its own box, or you can run it in a Docker container. And that sounded like it was a much easier task to me than building it from scratch. So I was on Nextcloud 10. I didn't even realize I had missed 11. Like that's how far behind I was. So I had to get myself from Nextcloud 10 to 12, which was not a direct upgrade. So what I ended up doing was I moved my database into a Nextcloud 12 container. So I now have containerized Nextcloud and Calabora. This was like a good night and a half's worth of work. But in the end, I think it's worth it. Nextcloud 12 is pretty nice. The interface is a little bit slicker. It actually responds faster. I don't know if that's because I moved it to a new box or if it's improvements in the code. And I've got Calabora now, which is pretty cool.
So I assume you got this off of Docker Hub. So which of these many containers did you end up running here?
Which Nextcloud container?
Yeah.
There's an official Nextcloud.
Okay.
I think it's like, now you're going to make me go look it up, aren't you?
I am. There's a Calabora code.
Calabora code is the container for Calabora. Oh, you've already got Nextcloud in a container, don't you?
Yep.
You're on 12, right?
Yep.
Then you don't have to worry about that. You shouldn't have to worry about that. Worry about Nextcloud. You wouldn't have to worry about Nextcloud. You'd have to go get the Calabora container.
Yeah, so I was asking which one you got here, but okay.
Yeah, Calabora code is the one you need.
Cool. This goes into the list of things I should do. Where's my
Yeah, so
notes?
basically, I'll dig it up for you, but I found a blog post on how to set up the Calibora code. Um, excuse me, the Calibora code container. You have to put an Nginx proxy in front of it,
Yep, I can do
if I
that.
remember correctly.
Got lots of those.
And there's code you need to put in there to handle the various locations so they redirect properly. Um, like I said, I'll have to dig that up for you and get it to you, or you can just Google it. But I think I Googled like how to set up Calibora with Nextcloud, and I found a link to the official docs, and the official docs linked to the Nginx config. So
Sweet. Speaking of Nginx config, maybe
yeah,
you know this or maybe you don't, because I'm just digging into it now. So I have an app that uses a ton of JavaScript and CSS stuff. And in the process of developing that, the Java and CSS changes. So, of course, every time you load it in the web browser, it's cached and you have to refresh the page. So the fix is allegedly to put a number, just like a version number, in the file name of the JavaScript and CSS. I'm sure you've seen this elsewhere, all over the place. Everybody does this now, which is great, except that I'm still having problems where it's still caching and I can't figure out why. The best I've come up with is maybe it's caching the index HTML file. And now I'm very much on the way towards digging through how to set e tags and all sorts of other insanity with
so you,
Nginx.
you think Nginx is caching the index and it shouldn't be?
I think the browser is, and there's something I have just started really digging into this, but something called an e tag that's used to, I guess it's like a hash of the index file. And the theory is, at least what I'm reading, is that if the e tag doesn't match, then it should cause it to refresh. So I'm trying to, but that may not be something that's enabled by default. So I'm trying to figure out. So if you or one of our awesome listeners knows what the hell I'm talking about and can tell me how to fix it, that would be great.
Yeah, I think you're moving further into the realm of web development than I'm used to.
Yeah, but it's you know, it's a I have to do it because I'm a sysadmin, and I control the Nginx server,
Yeah.
but I just have to figure out how to fix this.
See, I'm lucky enough to have a web team that works with our websites that's skilled enough to research most of this and just bring it to me when they're ready.
So if you could just pass this on to your web team,
um,
have them look it
they'll
up for me.
they'll probably listen to the podcast at some point, and one of them will
Dear,
just come up to me and go like, "Hey, that thing you guys were talking about here."
and to be clear, I'm trying to not turn off caching entirely on the Nginx box because that
Just
would be
turn it off
dumb.
completely. Caching is dumb.
Yeah,
Why would you want caching?
I know performance. Pfft. I'll just
All it
build
does is
another
cause
box.
problems.
It does. It
It's
does.
obvious. All it does is cause problems. Why would you want that stuff?
All right. So what are we talking about tonight?
So, what are we talking about tonight?
Do you have props?
I have props. We've had some interesting things occurring in the past week. Honestly, DerbyCon is coming up, and we need to get this thing ready to go. So, hang on a second. I have something to plug in.
I am desperately trying to figure out whose internet connection is screwed up here, mine or yours.
Why? What's the matter?
Oh, you spent the last like minute since the intro like jerking around and not finishing sentences.
Uh, uh, uh,
Yeah, suddenly you're better though, so I'm
Hmm,
confused.
I don't know. I hear you just fine.
I Okay.
Well,
Anyway,
anyway,
carry on. I'm probably insane.
you're insane. I mean, not because of this, just you're insane.
I agree.
Oh, great. Now I hear like interference from the Raspberry Pi getting into my headphones. That's not cool.
Should not be putting pie in your headphones.
Yes, you don't put pie in your headphones. They get all sticky. So anyway, eventually over my shoulder, you'll see this screen here come on. And maybe by then I'll be able to explain to you what's going on. So if you haven't heard this on previous episodes, the Hack My Derby that I've been building for 3 years now, this will be the third year, has been a contestant in the Hack Your Derby contest at DerbyCon every year for the past, again, 3 years. 2015, we were there and the contest wasn't on, but that was the first year we built the thing. So, of course, we had to take them. We built two that year, and it was basically a capture the flag contest on a Raspberry Pi inside of a hat that we wore throughout the entire conference. Me and one other guy, Rich. I don't know if he listens to the podcast, but he was instrumental in getting the original one up and running. We learned a lot that year, and the second year, so that was all just a self-contained CTF. It stood up a Wi-Fi access point. You could connect to it. You could there were flags, services basically running in Docker containers, which at the time, I don't know if anybody was running Docker on Raspberry Pis. At least not a lot of people, because it wasn't an easy thing to get set up and running. But anyway, I had services running in Docker containers. You could connect to them over the wireless, and then you could break into them, and you got codes. The codes got you points. The points didn't really mean anything. It's sort of like whose line is it anyway? And it basically get a score, and you could get yourself to the top of the scoreboard or whatever. And it was fun. It was well received, but like I said, the contest that we wanted to enter it in wasn't on. So of course, in 2016, at that point, so Rich was working with me like physically at the college, and then he had left the college. So I was kind of on my own for 2016. So I built a single derby and building on what we had done the year before, which was getting the Raspberry Pi up and running, getting Docker up and running, figuring out how to run the Wi-Fi access point, getting all that stuff like a solid base was already solved. So the next thing to solve was how do we get the thing online so that I can actually serve actual content to the internet, right? So the second incarnation of the Derby, version 2 of Hack My Derby, was internet connected. And not only could you connect to it over wireless, you could also connect to it from the internet while I was at the conference walking around. And you could break into the various containers. They were all forwarded from an EC2 instance that used an IPsec, no, an OpenVPN tunnel from AWS into my freaking Derby. And you could access, there was a web container, an SSH container. I think I ran a circle mud on it again because I'm weird like that. So this year, it was time to come up with, in my opinion, so the 2016 version of the Derby got me first place in the Hack Your Derby contest for the offsite built derbies. And that was pretty cool. I mean, that's honestly what I was hoping for. And, I got it. So now that all of that, I mean, think about this. I'm considering running a data center in a Derby with pretty decent uptime, a solved problem. Think about that. That's a solved problem. A mobile data center on my head throughout an entire weekend is now no longer a thing that I need to solve. I can just churn out a new Derby, which you now see behind me, powered up, within, I don't know, $100 worth of parts, including the Derby, and a couple days of work. I can churn out another Derby that will get me online and serve content. So obviously, I needed something more difficult to solve. Enter Hack My Derby version 3, aka Attack Derbies. So this year, and this comment came up a number of times at DerbyCon, where people thought Hack My Derby should be derbies that actually interact with each other, like attack derbies. Like the very first year that we did this, one of the comments I got over and over again was that we had to figure out a protocol in which derbies would interact with each other. and attack each other in some way. And then, of course, they'd get scored. So that's the problem we're trying to solve this year. So I've taken, we've basically come up with a model. And when I say we, that's me, obviously, because this is my project to start with. Jason, because, well, whatever, he's a glutton for punishment. And Dustin, who's a coworker of Jason's and a friend of mine who I met through DerbyCon last year when Jason brought him along. Dustin, by the way, we built him a Derby on site at DerbyCon inside of about 18 hours, which won the on site contest. So he took first place in the on site contest, which was kind of cool. So anyway, the three of us are going to go to DerbyCon this year with Master Derbies. And what the Master Derbies will do is they will be sort of a report or a collation point for all the contestant derbies, which I think we've talked about this before on the podcast. We're going to release software and plans on how to run these things, and they're all going to interact with each other and keep track of all their interactions and then report them back to the masters. The masters will then take all that information and send it up to a scoreboard that's hosted on the internet. So we're still working through a number of the issues to try to make this thing a reality. I think we've come up with a pretty good solution as to how to make everything work. We're just writing a bunch of code. And I thought maybe tonight, since it is sort of Docker related, because we're still using Docker, I thought maybe we'd talk a little bit about what those solutions might be, because there isn't a whole lot of secrecy this time around. The past 2 years, I kept things a little veiled simply because well, it was a contestant in a contest, right? I didn't want someone to copy it and then I'd end up at DerbyCon with something that someone else had already done and maybe they did it better. This year, I don't care. We're not entering it in the contest. In fact, we've actually been accepted as part of the contest. They're actually adding, that is Deviant, who runs the contest now, is adding an extra category. He used to have on-site built, home built, and now he's adding a third category just to cover us and people who want to participate in our contest. So yesterday, Jason, Dustin, and I got together and we worked out a number of pieces. And yeah, I just thought we'd talk through some of the technology behind it because I think it's going to be pretty slick. Some of it, like I said, isn't written yet. But yeah, we're working through it. I see Jason staring into his monitors. Have I lost you over there?
No, I'm listening.
Just
letting you
listening to me ramble along.
Yeah. Keep on rambling.
Keep on rambling. All right. So basically, the masters are all going to have, at least this is the way I picture things working. This is the part that's not finished yet. Well, here, we'll take it piece by piece.
Ideas welcome.
Yes, ideas welcome. So we're going to take this piece by piece. And remember, this is version 1. Remember how the 2015 Derby was a lesser version of the 2016 Derby. We figured stuff out. We took it to DerbyCon. We took what we learned that year, and I made it better the next year. Again, working on my own the following year. This year is sort of the first model of the Attack Derby platform. So keep in mind that some of this may sound very basic, and we're going to make it better, I think, as time goes on. In fact, if this goes over well, I may submit it as its own contest at DerbyCon next year, which I think could be kind of cool. It'll get it a little more attention, and could hopefully get a little more participation. That's the big thing. If nobody participates in this year, I'm going to consider it a flop, and we'll try something else next year. So if you're going to DerbyCon and you want to support this thing, build a contestant derby, and I'll tell you how, or at least I'll send you to where you can learn how to build a contestant derby during the podcast. I'll add it to the show notes as well. So it's going to look terrible as I pick it up because there's stuff hanging out everywhere. And if you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing me pick up a derby that's covered in wire and has an OLED screen on one side right now. Let me see if I can move this to the other side of my mic without knocking stuff over. So on this side of the derby is a Raspberry Pi Zero W. If you're unfamiliar with the Raspberry Pi Zero W, there is Wi-Fi and Bluetooth built into a Raspberry Pi Zero. It's a $10 compute module that does Bluetooth and wireless. That's pretty cool. We've got a 32 gig SD card. If you're going to build one of these things, that's the size we're recommending. You might be able to get away with 16 gig, but I can't guarantee that at this point. Just because the imaging process may require that you have to be the same size card as what we're building on. I'm not certain yet. Depends on how we can re-shrink the file system after we built these things.
Right.
On this side is a WinStar OLED, which you can see. I don't know if you can read that on the video or not, but it's basically cycling through a couple of simple statements. Right now it's black, but it'll come back. It says
the advertising loop.
That'd be the advertising loop. It basically says Master Derby version 1, and then it throws in. I just threw some fodder in there as a couple of sayings that it throws up there. Right now, it just gives me the Twitter handle at Hack the Derby. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do that. On the inside, and this is going to get messy because none of this is tied down just yet. We've got an internal battery. This is like a 250 milliamp hour, 350 milliamp hours written right there on the battery, internal battery, and then an Adafruit battery controller. That's what this thing with the blue light on it is. And then a little USB hub, which is a powered USB hub, which all of this stuff is powering the powered USB hub. And then, of course, attached to the other side of the battery controller is a larger battery, which is actually what powers the whole thing. The reason for the two batteries is so that this battery can be disconnected and swapped out without the thing going offline. That's how we got, I don't know, I didn't record the uptime at DerbyCon last year, but I'm going to say we got like 99% uptime. There was one time the battery died on me and I didn't realize it, and the thing went offline. Otherwise, it was online the whole conference. I know, fail, right? I see you shaking your head over there.
Yeah,
So attached to the powered USB hub is the only peripheral device that we need at this point because the Raspberry Pi Zero already has built-in wireless. And that's a T-Mobile capable cellular adapter made by a company called BAM. I'm thinking of Emerald Lagasse from back in the day. BAM!
I was thinking more like, BAM! It's wireless.
BAM! It's wireless. So in here you've got a SIM card from Project Fi. You can't really see that, I'm sure, because it's too washed out. But yeah, I last year I got this thing online using Project Fi, and I'm going to do that again this year. I'm waiting on my new SIM card from Google as we speak. So that's the inside. Basically, the idea is this Derby will connect to the internet. The other masters will either report back to this Derby or they'll have their own adapters. We haven't decided yet. That's going to depend on how cheap Jason and Dustin are going to be. So I'm going to set this back down. Yeah, very. Man, there's like stuff falling out of this thing as I try to move it. At least nothing's disconnecting. And all the wire you see on the outside of this is not just decoration. This is actually the wire that connects the Raspberry Pi to the display with my awesome soldering job. So if you could see that in the screen, in the display, then, you know. All right, I'm going to sit this back down. Okay, so I've been rambling a lot about how the thing's built. Basically, that's a conglomeration of all the work that we've done on these things over the past 2 years. And then that's basically the same physical build that I used last year, with the exception of last year's had an external antenna, which I think didn't really do anything other than look neat. Anything. We'll find out here if the cellular connection is horrible. So I took the platform from last year and what it's going to do is it's going to over that wireless. Now, the other thing that we needed to figure out was how the contestants are going to be deployed. Now, sometime around now, so time is running short. Sometime around now, we have to tell people how to build their contestant derbies. So they have time to buy parts and they have time to build the things and get them all, you know, however they want them to look by the time DerbyCon gets here. The problem is we don't have all the software written. So what I'm hoping to do is in the next, hopefully the next week or two, get a custom Raspbian image up on the Hack My Derby website, which is hackmyderby.com. what that'll put there, and obviously it won't be able until they're once they're within range of me, they'll. I see you over there talking about how my internet is flaky. Am I dropping out on you? How much
Yeah,
are you
yeah.
getting?
If I'm following only because I know what's going on. I'm not. I'm interesting. It'd be interesting to know exactly what Digital Effects is seeing online. Same here. I just see the logo.
That's not good. I can hear you
No.
fine. It's weird.
Well, I'm. You came back just as I started talking again, same as last time, which is
That
weird.
is that is definitely odd. Well, anyway, I mean, so I guess the
It
YouTube
it,
feed for anyone
it
who's
must.
watching on YouTube is getting flaky. I don't know why.
It's Google. They're
Since
playing with BGP again.
it's Google's fault. I'm recording this locally, and the audio will not be affected by latency of Google unless Jason gets interrupted. And so far, he's been
Oh,
coming through to me clear. So,
blame me.
no, I'm not blaming you. Saying if you get interrupted.
Okay,
So
Raspberry
anyway,
Pi.
the contestants once they're built are going to be in like a registration mode where their goal is to simply find a master and register. Figuring out how to initiate the registration is something we haven't quite solved yet, but hopefully we'll get that figured out soon. Basically, you're going to have to tell your contestant what name you want displayed, which would be like your handle on Twitter or whatever moniker you want to go with, whatever pseudonyms, whatever you want to call it, pseudonym. Um, and then, of course, there's going to have to be some Derby identifier, and that's probably going to be a generated number, a generated code of some sort. We've kicked around the idea of using GPG keys, or we may just randomly generate a hash and chop some numbers out of it and use that. But anyway, that stuff's going to have to be populated on your contestant before it registers. And then when the registration occurs, it's going to have to report that to the master. The master will then log that and send it to the scoreboard. Once you've done that, your derby, your contestant, is basically going to pull some Docker containers from the master and start those containers up. Those containers will be things like the attack API. Yes, I said API. These are all web services that we've written. The attack API, the report API, which will report your interactions, the attack client API, which will be another piece to the interaction APIs. And then once all that happens, you'll have a fully functional contestant, which will seek out other contestant derbies and call their APIs and log interactions amongst them. Now, like I said, this is the piece that could use some elaboration, and that may improve for next year. Currently, attacks are simply: I've called your API, I've given you my Derby ID, I get your Derby ID in response, and then there's some code generated that goes along with that. And then whichever Derby reports that back to the master first, basically, then it'll be reported to the master. The master will perform some manner of contest that decides who the winner of that interaction is and upload that to the scoreboard. If the other Derby that was involved in that interaction reports the same interaction later, it'll just be discarded because it was already counted for. Now, what I'd love to see in the future is those interactions to do the the contest on the fly, right? So maybe by the knowledge of the person who's built the derby, maybe they can throw some techniques into it that make it do this or do that, or maybe it's pure chance, right? When you interact with the two of them, they roll some dice essentially and decide who wins, and then that gets logged and reported. Like I said, we're not willing to go that far this year. We have too many other hurdles to get over at this point. So that'll be this year's. But that's really the basics. Did I miss anything, Jason, or did I? I mean, I rambled on a lot. I know I cut out a few times on you, but
No, I think the goal this year is to get the framework up for this sort of a contest, and
yeah,
then kind of
yeah,
evolve it over time. Because I mean, even if you look at other types of contests that are similar to this, I mean, they've had like attack badges, and even if you go down the
right,
path of like a CTF, it's always fairly simplistic in the beginning, and then it just evolves over time to something much, tougher and deeper. So I think what we want to do is make sure that we can get that the simplistic up front, kind of get people interested, and then
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe open it up for some ideas that other people can give us ideas on how to proceed.
Yeah. So at the moment, we're basically developing a framework for how we can make hats attack each other at DerbyCon.
Yeah.
That's a
Yep.
very odd thing to have just said. This coming from the guy who ran a data center on his head for 2 years.
Yeah. So, and again, it's really simple this year, and we're letting the kind of all the actual attacks are happening. Essentially, the clients are reporting it to us, and then we determine who wins, which is
Yeah.
probably just going to be a dice roll of some sort.
Yeah. So the keys here are we need, and the reason we haven't tried to tackle the interactions as a more dynamic thing is because we need to find a way to make it um, less hackable. Right? So if we have sophisticated code that runs on the contestant derbies that decides who wins in these contests, there's nothing to stop the average Joe from taking their derby offline, plugging the SD card into their laptop, and modifying our code.
Right.
That's part of why we decided to use Docker containers. Now that doesn't mean that they're unhackable. Obviously, you can get into a Docker container and change the code that runs on it, but it does mean there's one more barrier. It also means that we can push new versions of these containers whenever you interact with a master. If we decide there's a bug in our code, we can push a new version of that container out. And then next time your Derby comes and reports its interactions with us, it could check to make sure it has the most recent version of the container and pull the new one if we want it to.
Right.
The things we still need to figure out is how the registration process is going to work. I have a basic flow in my head of how that thing is going to play out, and I have some of it written. The same thing with how wireless is going to work. So each contestant needs to run both a wireless AP and a wireless client. So I guess they call that station mode and client mode or something. So each one is going to have its own AP so that other derbies can connect to it, and it's going to have to be able to connect to other derbies all at the same time. And it's, of course, you're going to have to be able to access the attack APIs over that wireless, but not get in and like mess with their reporting mechanism or dump their database or things like that. So these are all complicated things that we figure the simpler the contestant derbies are, the easier those problems are to solve for this year. And next year, maybe we, pull out a few more stops and make it a little more complicated. Or maybe we open it up so that as long as you're following a certain protocol, we don't care how you build your derby.
Right.
I mean, that could just be it. We release Docker containers and we say, however the hell you want to build them, as long as they're connectable and they run these APs or they run these containers, then you're good to go. So, yeah, I guess
maybe next year we add blockchain to it, and part of the contest is who can sign the blockchain wins.
The number of times blockchain has come up in our discussions, because we had this concept that every contestant, or there would be a shared blockchain amongst all of or distributed blockchain, is that the way to describe this, amongst all the contestants, and then basically they would synchronize every time they were in range of each other. So basically, if we had a contestant that never came near the master, we would still get their interactions because they were in the blockchain, and hopefully they have synchronized with someone who does come in contact with the master. The problem is, I mean, there's timestamps, I believe, involved in blockchain, and time on a Raspberry Pi is...
It's a distributed computing problem, and well,
yeah,
it becomes interesting.
Yeah, there's a number. Plus, Raspberry Pis are tiny, and they have tiny little CPUs. Could you imagine running a cryptocurrency on a bunch of Raspberry Pis? Not a currency, you know what I mean? The same deal, running blockchain on a bunch of Raspberry Pis.
Well, I don't know. Moog can do it, I'm sure.
Yeah, right. He'll have I'm just picturing Moog walking in with a Raspberry Pi with a bunch of NVIDIA cards off the side. I'm cracking your passwords and breaking your Bitcoins.
Yep. Yeah. So it's possible. So yeah, we have plenty of ideas of new and interesting things to do. Um, and some of the know-how to do some of it, but you know, trying to prevent feature creep.
Yeah,
How many
right.
ideas did we come up with yesterday that we were like, oh, we got to add that? Like,
Yeah, we
no,
have.
wait.
Yeah, what was it? Slack integration with the
Yeah,
scoreboard.
we're gonna add Slack integration. We're gonna set up a scoreboard. Yeah.
You know, if we get all the basics done, then yes, let's do that. But for now, we need to avoid scope creep. So yeah, I mean that's Hack My Derby in a nutshell. If you're going to
No, it's in
DerbyCon
a Raspberry Pi.
in a Raspberry Pi shell, um, oh, I did want to hold on.
Is this going to be a visual thing that you're going to do on an audio podcast?
We have one viewer.
We have one viewer. Oh,
I just thought it'd be fun to show the Raspberry Pi that's not in a hat yet. So I mean, this is another Pi Zero. It's in a case. Hold on. I really don't like these cases, but whatever. This one has a camera. That's not part of the contest. This is actually not a Pi that's going to be part of the contest. But you know, Pi screen. You know, simple as that. I suppose I could power this one up, but basically, one of the really cool things, and I forget if we talked about this before, is this OLED. When we started the first Derby, we decided to go with an OLED screen because it uses so much less power than an LCD, right? And again, you can thank Rich for that. This was all Rich's suggestion. And we read about how you can use these OLEDs in like serial mode. They call it SPI mode.
Right.
But what you have to do is, and I don't know if my camera is high definition enough to get this for you YouTube folks, but you look on the back of this thing and you see like down the side over here and on this row over here, there's all these tiny little surface mount resistors. Basically, you have to desolder those and move them around to switch this thing from parallel mode to SPI mode. So Rich did that, and he said it was a severe pain in the butt, but he did it. And then we took the library that was supposed to make this thing work with the Raspberry Pi, and it flat out didn't work. We don't know if we moved the wrong resistors. We don't know if the library was garbage. We don't know. We don't know why it didn't work. All we know is it didn't work. So then Rich had to desolder them again and put them back to parallel mode. And then we found this, basically someone had taken, so this is a 16:2 OLED character display. They also sell a 16:2 LCD character display, and Adafruit has an official Python library which makes that thing work. They don't have an official library that makes the OLED work with the Raspberry Pi. So we had to figure that piece out. And someone had taken the OLED library. I guess the core differences are like timings and signal timing and whatnot between the OLED and the LCD. So he had taken the thing and modified the existing LCD library to have the proper timing for the OLED. Well, it didn't work that well either. We got it to work, but it would only display on one line, and you couldn't use the extra features of the OLED. You couldn't do custom characters. You couldn't scroll. You couldn't slide in and out. Like, none of that stuff would work right. So we were getting pretty desperate, and we had all these technical documents for the OLED, and there's a guy that I work with at the college who's kind of a Python guy. And we went to him sort of out of desperation and said, like, look, we have this thing. Here's the library we have for it. It doesn't do all these things. Can you help? And he said, well, sure, give me the spec sheet. And we gave him the spec sheet. And like half a day later, he came back with a brand new OLED Python library that we literally just dropped into the code. He told us how to make the thing work, and off we went. We had an OLED that worked perfectly. So I've taken that a step further now, and there is now a Docker container, and I have the thing up on GitHub. It's included; it'll be included in the instructions on how to get these things up and running. But basically, I've taken that code and taken it a step further and put it inside of a Docker container, so that if you get a Raspberry Pi, wire up the OLED, install Docker, which is still kind of a manual process, you can simply pull this microservice container, and via curl, you can write to the OLED using this microservice that interacts with the Python library that was written. So that was a pretty big step forward. I have that on this Pi that I was showing you. That's what made me remember it. But it's also what's driving this display right here. You see running along in the background. That's blocked by the arm of my thing here. But yeah. So yeah, every contestant derby is going to come with that basically pre-installed, or at least with instructions on how to get it pulled from Docker Hub, or not from Docker Hub, but from GitHub maybe, or from wherever we're going to put the thing, so that the display will work on day one. So all that toil that we had to put into getting those displays up and running, all you have to do now is pull a Docker container and you'll be able to make the display work. Lucky you.
Yeah. Lucky me.
Yeah. So, I mean, to put this in perspective, when we built the first Derby, it took us months to get the display working. A, to figure out the wiring, B, to get the library working, and then C, to actually write scripts that worked around the thing to make it do what we had to make it do. I can now churn out, I mean, we did it twice yesterday. We can churn out OLED capable Raspberry Pis in like half an hour now.
Yeah, about 20 minutes it took us.
Yeah, it's basically as fast as you can solder it and get Docker compiled, you can get the OLED up and running.
Yep, and then it's just a simple little curl command, and you can display whatever you want on it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if I had set things up such that I could, well, I don't want to go that far, but I could connect this thing to my machine that I'm podcasting from and show you from the command line, but I didn't set that up before the podcast started. And if I do it now, I'll probably knock us offline. That's just the way this night's going. So anyway, we are open to suggestions. If anybody has any ideas on how to make any of the stuff we just described work. Like I said, we've already got sort of skeletons written for the attack API and the attack client and the registration client and the master API, but they all need work yet. What we really need to figure out is this provisioning process that I described. I'm thinking that we're going to work in like our own. I'm hoping we can run a Docker repo on the master, and then we'll basically hand off like a Docker Compose file that just pulls down the containers that it needs and knows how to get them up and running. But yeah, so I guess that's where we're at. We're kind of coming up against the gun, or coming up against the wall here on time. We got to get this thing churned out so that people can start building contestants before they get to DerbyCon.
Right.
So I guess the alternative is people can buy the parts. I already have the parts listed online. People can buy the parts and bring them to DerbyCon, and we'll be happy to help you build them there at the at one of the hacking tables that are set up.
Yeah, we'll put the link up and with all the info in there, and then you can buy it. You can get it all set up. We'll continue adding to those links, and you can build Docker or get that running on it, and then from there it's just getting the containers.
If you go to hackmyderby.com/build, and I'm going to put this in the show notes. I'm copying it right now and adding it to the show notes. It gives you a basic description of the parts you're going to need. I'm just reading over it here to make sure that I'm not lying to you. Yeah, it gives you a basic overview of what parts you're going to need. It doesn't have any software listed there yet. Like I said, I'm hoping that the software can be published soon. As Jason can attest to, I just added the link to the show notes.
Oh, look, a link.
Look at that. It's like all calibrated up.
Linky and stuff.
Linky and stuff. All right. So, I mean, this is a shorter podcast than we're used to.
Sorry.
Find something to ramble about.
Ramble. How about that? Yeah, I got nothing.
You got nothing.
Well, so as we speak, I mean, so on a more serious note, as we speak, the Mother Nature is adding to the 11 trillion gallons of water that has already poured itself on top of Texas.
Oh, right.
And all politics and everything else aside, if you know people that are out there, or if you don't, I'm sure they can use all the help they can get. So Red Cross is taking donations of money and blood. There are other funds that are taking money as well. Do yourself a favor. I know it sounds horrible. Do yourself a favor and do background checks before you give money.
Yes. There are
Unfortunately,
too many
there
dishonest
are,
people in this world.
yeah, unfortunately, there are, I mean, let's call them what they are. There are assholes out there who will take advantage of anything and will set up a fund to help people, which is nothing more than a fund to put money in their pockets. So
Yeah.
make sure what you're giving money to is what you think it is, and help out where you can. If you're in or near the Texas area, I know I saw notices going out today that they're actually looking actively for nurses and rescue workers, etc. So that's something you can do. But every little bit counts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, whenever there's a disaster like this, restore some faith in humanity. Things have been dark the past several months. If you can help, help.
Yep. That's all I
And
got.
on that note, I guess we'll close for the night. So you can find us on ironsysadmin.com, which still is just a redirect to my site, which, by the way, my site has been moved to Drupal 8 and redesigned. It's got a new theme on it, which has some horrible formatting for certain things that I had taken for granted in the past and I have to work on, but whatever, you can live with it.
Spare time. You'll fix it in your spare time.
In my spare time, the spare time that I used to get it to Drupal 8, spent all the spare time that I had available at the time, and now I can't do anymore. If you want to help us out and send money our way, you can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/ironsysadmin. I don't say this to guilt anybody into giving us any money, but we did lose a significant donor because he had some life issues come up. I'm not trying to single anybody out. I'm not even going to say who it was. First, I want to say thank you to that guy because he was giving us a substantial monthly contribution, and it is very, very appreciated. I don't want him to feel obligated that he needs to continue giving, especially if he has better places to spend his money. I know exactly how that is. I've been in the exact same scenario in the past. So anyway, thank you to that person. And if anybody feels like they need to help us out, then feel free. Patreon.com/ironsysadmin. Anything you can give us, whether it's a couple pennies to a couple bucks to, $20-$30 a month, anything will help us out. We have very few operating costs, but the more income we have for the podcast, the better we can make things. Better hosting, better quality equipment, whatever. I think we're doing okay, but things can always be better, right? You can find us on Facebook and Twitter, facebook.com/ironsysadmin or twitter.com/ironsysadmin or at ironsysadmin, obviously. YouTube. We're on youtube.com/blah, blah, 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 or just ironsysadmin.com/YouTube. Once we get enough subscribers on YouTube, we can change that to a better name and not have to have a redirect that's all hacky like we do now. Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. You can find us on those two places as well, or Apple iTunes if you're living in the past, like Jason is.
In the past? No, I'm in the present somewhere.
Yeah, right. You guys are over there chatting on YouTube. If you want to watch us do this live, which Digital FX can tell you how entertaining that was tonight, because I forgot to hit the record button on the freaking... Never mind.
So we have one listener who's seen the full show.
He's seen the full show. Yeah, the pieces that you all missed. So yes, you can, on that YouTube link that I just mentioned, every other Monday night at 9 o'clock Eastern, we try to get this thing rolling. Sometimes it's a little bit after 9, but usually it's before 9:30. So if you can spare your Monday night, come on over. We'd be happy to have you. We have live chat on YouTube. Sometimes it distracts us, and you can laugh at us when it does. So yeah, join us. It's fun to have some interaction. All right,
Digital
you got any?
Effects is never going to tell what happened on the show.
Never gonna tell.
Never going to tell.
Yeah, I see. He'll never tell.
All right. You can find me at Xenophage. There's no F in that.
There's no F. No, but there's something that sounds like an F.
Maybe.
Well, obviously, because xenophage sounds like an F.
Fine.
But there's no F. It's a silent X.
Silence X. No, the X is not. Well, I mean, sort of.
Just go with it. God damn it.
Yeah. Okay.
And you can find me at Gangrif on Twitter. Gangrif. As if that was hard to spell. There is an F in that.
Yes.
I should change it to Gangrif with a PH.
You could do that.
Would that be more hackery?
No, not enough zeros and ones and leets in there.
Can I put an @ symbol inside of a Twitter handle? I don't think that would work.
I wonder if you could do it with like UTF-8 or something.
G@NGR1PH.
Use the old.
I have to add an X in there somewhere.
Use the old what is it? The old Windows trick with Alt.
Oh yeah, Alt 255. They put a space in your directory name, so your boss, I mean spouse, I mean kids, I mean no one can find your hidden directories.
Yep, that's it.
All right, I think we've rambled on enough for tonight. All right, everyone, thanks for listening. See you again in 2 weeks. I made it through the episode and still have beer left. That is a crime.
Yeah, I know. Me too. Too much beer. Could drink it all.
Well, you still have a bunch of Rogue in there that I left from yesterday, huh?
Yeah, I this is working out well for me. I don't have to buy beer.
You should still. No, we drank all the dead guy. I think the IPAs are left.
Yep. Yeah, I didn't get a single dead guy in a bottle.
Sorry.
Wait, did I? No, there's 2 IPAs.
There should be 2 IPAs left, and there was probably a nut brown.
Maybe that's what it is.
Those browns
I know there's another Rogue in there, but then I have the Innis, whatever the hell that it was.
Oh, the one Dustin brought?
Yeah.
Those were good.
Yeah. Plus all the beer that I had.
Imperial Stout that he had, that was pretty good.
Yeah. I was gonna, but then I thought, and I don't know. Next time.
I should have taken those nut browns home with me. Then they're tasty.
Yeah, I have a ton of beer, so we're stocked for next time we do this.
Good.
This thing with the stuff and the
derby thing.
What's it?
All right. Well, thank you to Digital FX for tuning in. You're the only person in chat. I don't know if you're the only person that watched or not, but thanks for being here. All right. I think I'm going to end the live broadcast. See you guys again in 2 weeks. Or you
Always.
Person.
Well,
Digital FX.
Bring a friend next time.
Bring a friend. Yes. If you bring a friend and they bring a friend, then we'll have an audience. All right. Good night.